think we're rolling. Hi everybody, welcome back to our weekly live stream. My name is Alicia, and this week we are going to talk about a modal verb in the past. This week we are going to focus on would, so I'm going to talk about would have and wouldn't have. We'll wait a couple minutes to give people a chance to join us live, and then we will begin. So as you join, please make sure to send a message in the chat so that we can say hello to you, and also please make sure to like and share the video so that other people can find today's lesson. All right, I see a lot of people in the YouTube chat there. Hello, Abdul Aziz, Mohammed, Gina B, Emiliano, Luciano. Hi, Leah. Hi, everybody. Thanks very much for joining us this week. As I said, today's topic is modal verbs. I'm going to talk about how to use would in the past. So that means we're going to cover would have and wouldn't have today. Okay, so while we wait, a couple of other announcements. The first one, if you missed it before, the team has extended this to the end of summer. If you want to get access to a beginner level course on our website, you can do that from the link below the video if you're watching on YouTube, or above the video if you are watching on Facebook. This banner here at the bottom of the screen is pointing to a guide, like a PDF guide, a workbook that you can use together with the beginner level course on our website. So please check that out. If you would like to download that, it's all for free. I don't think I said that. It's a free beginner level course that you can take a look at. So please check the link below the video if you're watching on YouTube, or above the video if you're watching on Facebook. That is announcement number one. Announcement number two is if you have questions, about something different from today's topic, please send them to me. This is a screenshot. I show you this every week. I should send you a new screenshot. This is a screenshot from the Ask Alicia series. Oh, thanks very much, Omar, on YouTube. This is a screenshot from the Ask Alicia series where you can send me your questions and I will maybe answer them. If you have a question, you can search for it on the YouTube channel, number one, at English Class 101 on YouTube. That's a really good way to check and see if your question has already been answered. If not, or if you have a new question, send it to me here. The link is englishclass101.com/ask-Alicia. I will put a link in the YouTube video description after today's lesson. Okie dokie. All right. I see lots of people on YouTube right now. Facebook, I'm coming to you. I'm broadcasting from my house again today. So I'm checking Facebook here. So I have a lot of screens to manage, but I'm looking for you, Facebook. I think that it should be there in just a second. So I'm going to show you today's lesson boards. As I said, today's topic is would have and wouldn't have. This will be the flow for today's lesson. First, I'm going to talk about when to use would have and wouldn't have. This is kind of a tricky grammar point, a little bit of a challenge. So we'll start by talking about when to use it. Then we'll talk about would have and wouldn't have and how to make statements. Finally, we'll talk about how to make questions with this. Okie dokie. So let's get it started. First, I want to make sure Facebook is going. Facebook, I see you there. Hello, everyone on Facebook. Welcome. Kim and Emil and Bash. Oh, Iman. Hello. Thanks, everybody, for joining us live. That's awesome. Yeah, last week we had a little hiccup with Facebook, I think so. Okay, fantastic. Let's get started. Alrighty, so let's begin with the first part then. But would have and wouldn't have. When should we use them? This is our topic for today. So when should we use would have and wouldn't have? What's the deal? Oh, sorry. There's a little bit of noise outside today. Hopefully not forever. When do we use would have and wouldn't have? We use these to express a past action if a past condition had been true. So I know that this is kind of difficult to imagine, like what does this mean exactly? So imagine on a timeline here. Imagine that sometime in the past, so this is now on our timeline, way in here is the future, and back here is the past. Today we want to focus on the past. So we imagine with this grammar point some past condition, and we're thinking about like the cause and effect, or like the relationship between a past condition with if and some past action. But the key, and what's kind of strange about this grammar point, is that these two actions, when we use would have with a positive or wouldn't have with a negative, these actions did not happen. We just want to imagine some past action. We want to imagine some past action. Okay, so hey, remote control team, is the Facebook live stream okay? I see other videos jumping in and out. Okay, sorry, there's some sound behind me right now. Hopefully it stops soon. Sorry everybody, it's really irritating. Okay, but today I want to look at a lot of different examples to talk about this grammar point. Okay, so let's take a look at these two. We'll look at a positive and a negative. And I also want to point out, in today's lesson, we're going to use conditionals. I'm not going to talk about conditional grammar, this part of the sentence, in today's lesson. If you have questions about conditionals, though, please check the YouTube channel. I've made lots of videos about conditionals. So with that in mind, let's practice. Okay, so if I had studied, I would have passed the test. If I had studied, I would have passed the test. So what does this sentence mean? What is happening here? This, if I had studied, this part is this if section right here I talked about. So that means this condition, if I had studied, this is showing a past condition, that means this was not true. This did not happen. If I had studied, this did not. So in other words, I did not study. I didn't study. But I want to imagine if I had. If that had been true, I would have passed the test. I would have passed the test. So here is our grammar for today. Yeah, I would have passed the test. So this part, again, shows it's a past situation, a past condition, but I just want to imagine it, and it did not happen. So yes, I've marked this with a check in the past, but this check mark means if this condition had been true, this condition would also be true. So what does this mean? This means, in other words, I did not study for the test and I did not pass the test. But I want to imagine how I could have changed my past action. This is what we use would have and wouldn't have to do. Okay, so let's look then at a negative example, something that uses wouldn't have. Okay, so first part, again, an if statement. So again, if. This is something that is not true, but we just want to imagine it. If I hadn't, so hadn't means had not. If I hadn't forgotten my wallet today. If I hadn't forgotten my wallet today, I wouldn't have borrowed money from a friend. If I hadn't forgotten my wallet today, I wouldn't have borrowed money from a friend. So what does this mean here? Again, my if conditional starts this out. So if I hadn't forgotten my wallet, this means I did forget my wallet. That happened, that's true. I did forget my wallet. I wouldn't have borrowed money from a friend. So that means I did borrow money from a friend. So this situation, we just want to again express that something would, some past condition, if this past condition had been true, the later past condition would be different. So again, if this had not been true, in other words, if I had remembered my wallet, so I did borrow money, but I want to express I would not have done that. Yes, I know there's some very strange things happening. Some of you are asking some questions about the transmission on Facebook. There's a jumping between videos on Facebook. I think that might be a Facebook issue. I'm very sorry. You can maybe check the YouTube feed to get the full video. I think that might be a Facebook issue. Okay, so yes, there is some noise in the background. I hope that it stops very soon. Okay, so let's go to the final point for part 1 today. The pronunciation of would have and would not have. Yeah, there's some construction sound in the background today, unfortunately. Sorry, everybody. So, pronunciation points about this. Would have and would not have contract. They reduce. So, let's start by talking about would have. Would have. So, would have contracts to would've. Would've. So I'll try to repeat this a lot because it's noisy right now. Would've. And would've, this contracts even more. In everyday speech, we say woulda, woulda. So for example, in this sentence, if I had studied, I would have, this part reduces to, if I had studied, I would have passed the test. I would have passed the test. So we do not use this spelling like in official documents or anything like that. But you can use this when like you're texting with your friends, for example. Okay. Then let's go to would not have. Would not have. So this would not have reduces, again, this is not an official spelling, but this is just the sound that it makes. So would not have reduces to wouldn't have. Wouldn't have. Which goes even shorter to wouldna. Wouldna. So this wouldn't, that we keep the N sound there, and it becomes wouldna, wouldna. Would not have becomes wouldna. So, in a sentence, if I hadn't forgotten my wallet today, I wouldn't have borrowed money from a friend. I wouldn't have borrowed money from a friend. This is how it sounds in native speech. Okay, so this is part 1 for today's lesson. Some of your questions are coming in. Esteban on YouTube says, can I use would've in my writing? You can use this one, would've. You can use would've in casual writing. Like if you're just sending a quick email to a coworker or something like that, that's okay. If you're writing something more formal, I would not recommend it. A good general rule to follow is if you are writing something formal, don't use contractions. Like try to use the non-contracted, the non-reduced forms. Yeah, okay. All right, so some other questions are coming in. Some examples. If I hadn't, I'm going to talk in part 2 about how to make some statements. So those of you who are asking questions about examples, I will get to your examples in just a moment. So please keep your examples and send them to me after part 2 of today's lesson. Okie dokie. Yeah, Facebook, you're very interesting over there today. There is some work in the background today. It is very, very obnoxious. Obnoxious means irritating, but what can you do? Okay, so let's take one quick break. If you missed it earlier, a quick reminder, this banner at the bottom of the screen, Get Your Guide to Learn English at Home. Our team made at the beginning of, spring maybe, a beginner workbook. It's 52 pages, I remember, 52 pages to go together with a beginner level English course on our website at EnglishClass101.com. They extended the time for that to the end of summer. So if you wanted to practice, if you wanted to get the beginner level course access, please check the link below the video on YouTube or above the video on Facebook. There is a new link there so you can access everything for free. Download the workbook and everything for free. Super cool. Okay, with that said then, let's go to part 2 for today. I'll show you again today's lesson boards so that you can see what we're going to talk about. So I just talked about when we use would have and wouldn't have. Next, we're going to talk about how to make statements. So some of you have already sent me some of your example sentences, which is super cool. That's fantastic. So please keep your example sentence in your mind. And after we talk about part 2, please try to send your example sentence in the chat. Yes. Okay. So if you are just joining us, today's topic is modal verbs in the past, would have and wouldn't have. Okay, so we're going to get to part 2. Also, a reminder, if you have not already, please make sure to like and share the video. Okay, let's get to part 2. All right, part 2. How to make statements. Here we go. Let's take a look at some grammar rules. Everybody loves grammar rules, right? Okay, let's get started. So, how to make statements, and I will include negative. We will talk about questions at the end of today's lesson. Alrighty, so how do we make a statement? First, I mentioned earlier that with this grammar we use if conditional. So we use an if conditional. You can put it at the beginning of your sentence. You can put it at the end of your sentence. Today, I've used them, I think all of them, all of my examples today, I think, use if at the beginning of the sentence. Okay, so let's look at this. What is happening here? Actually, this grammar is we can easily make sentences with this. So we make our if conditional, and just a quick hint, today's if conditional uses this pattern. If subject had past participle. So again, I'm not going to talk about this part of the grammar. We're going to focus here today. So we have our if conditional with a comma. So after the introductory clause. Then we go to our subject and would have and past participle verb. Subject plus would have plus past participle verb. So again, this is something that you have to study. I'm going to introduce some very common examples today. All right, so subject would have past participle, and to make it a negative, put not right here. So would not have, or as we practiced earlier, wouldn't have. To those of you who are commenting about the board lately, our office is, we're working remotely due to the world situation now. So I'm try to put a picture of the lesson notes throughout the lesson so you can take a picture too. Okay, so let's look at a lot of examples to see what's going on here. First example here. Here's my if conditional. If I had gone to bed earlier last night, I would have been well rested this morning. If I had gone to bed earlier last night, I would have been well rested this morning. So again, what is happening in this sentence? First part right here. This if I had gone to bed earlier last night part. This is my if conditional, yeah? It starts here, if, and ends with my comma. This comma is a very good hint. If I had gone to bed earlier last night. So that means I did not go to bed early last night. This earlier shows us too, earlier than I did. So if I, maybe for example, I went to bed at like 1 a.m. But if I had gone to bed at 10 p.m., I want to express earlier than I did. If I had gone to bed earlier last night, I would have been well rested this morning. So maybe you know the word well rested, yeah? So that means you feel energized after sleeping. So I would have been well rested this morning. Again, all of this is happening in the past. So a common mistake that I sometimes see from learners is they talk about a condition that's true now. But this part, I would have been well rested this morning, this is also a past condition. So we're not talking about the present with would have and wouldn't have. So I've used would have, as we talked about here, subject, I would have been. So past participle verb is been here. I would have been well rested this morning. So here's a positive example. Okay, let's look then at a negative example. I'll read it one time first. If he hadn't eaten so much junk food at the party, he wouldn't have felt sick when he got home. Once more, if he hadn't eaten so much junk food at the party, he wouldn't have felt sick when he got home. So here's my if conditional. So if to comma. There's my introduction to the situation. If he hadn't, so this hadn't is had not. If he hadn't eaten so much junk food at the party, so this part means he did. He ate a lot of junk food at the party. He wouldn't have felt sick when he got home. So that means if this past condition had not been true, this condition would not have been true. We know that because this is a negative. So this shows would not have been true. Okay. Some examples are coming in. Marisol says, my girlfriend wouldn't have cheated on me if I hadn't been so jealous. Perfect grammar, very nice grammar in that sentence. That's very funny. Yes, our sounds are back. Hooray. Okay, all right. Let's go to one more example and then we'll continue to part 3. Here we go. All right. If we had started working on our project earlier, we wouldn't have been rushing to finish by the deadline. So once more, if we'd started working on our project earlier, we wouldn't have been rushing to finish by the deadline. Okay, so again, we have this earlier in our if part of the sentence. So if we had started working on our project earlier than we did, so maybe we started a bit late on our project. If we had started earlier, we would not have been rushing to finish by the deadline. So this means we were rushing to finish by the deadline. So rushing means hurrying. We were trying to hurry to finish. So wouldn't have been rushing to finish by the deadline. So again, this did not happen, but we were rushing is what this is saying. Okay. Good. Yes, everyone is commenting about the lovely noise in the background today, the construction noise. So this is part 2 for today's lesson. Yes, if the world situation had not changed so quickly, there would not have been construction work near my house. So there's a good real-life example for today. All right, so that's part 2. And then we'll go to part 3, questions for the rest of today's lesson. Okay. So I'll take one more very short break. I'm looking for your examples. Great, some examples are coming in on YouTube. If you had informed me about the class, says Abdullah, I would bring you at the time. Oh, I would have brought you to class on time. I would have brought you to class. So don't forget this part. Subject, I would have, past participle verb. When you make your statements, follow this pattern right here. Subject would have, past participle verb. Okay. All right. Let's go to the last part of today's lesson then. If you missed it, very quick reminder this time, there is a free guide to learning English at home. So please check it out and download the workbook that goes together with that. Okay. I'll show you one more time so you can take a picture for those of you who were commenting. This is today's lesson board. I talked about when we use would have and wouldn't have, and then how to make statements. And then last today we're going to talk about how to make questions. Alrighty, some questions are coming on YouTube. After this video, when will you come live? Every week, Wednesday night, Eastern Standard Time, 10 p.m. every week. You can set a notification to make sure you don't miss the lesson. All right, let's continue to the last part. Hopefully there won't be lots of sound, but I don't know. Okay, let's go to the last part. The last part is how to make questions. I hope that you can focus on this part as like a lot today. This part I think is a tricky part, but it's a really good grammar point for asking for like advice about a mistake you made in the past. So I want to, this is really today's focus point. Okay, let's continue as best as we can. For those of you who are saying it's hard to focus, for me too, because of the noise, I'm very sorry. I hope you can at least look at the words and review. Okay, so let's take a look. How do we make questions with would have and wouldn't have here? So again, we start with if. So we can make questions without the if part here. We can do that. I'm going to show you some patterns that use if and some that use no if. So we'll practice both a little bit. The next part here is WHQ. So this means WH question. Who, what, where, when, why, how is also okay here. So we can use a WH question at the beginning to show we need information, or we can remove it to make a yes or no question. Again, we're going to practice this in just a minute. Okay, let's go to the last part of this is same as we've been practicing. Would subject have past participle verb? Would subject have past participle verb? To make it negative, wouldn't subject have past participle verb? Okay, so let's take a look at a few examples that use this. So first one, I've used this if conditional at the beginning here. Okay, so if you had had free time last week, what would you have done? So many learners ask, what is happening here? Why are there two hads together? Is that correct? Yes, one, it is correct. Why? This if you had is like this because we are making a past perfect structure. This is the verb have, but because of grammar rules, we have to use the past participle verb form here. If you had had free time last week, what would you have done? So this means you did not have free time last week, but imagine that you did, and what would you have done in that case? Okay, all right, so you can answer it if you want. I would have, you can answer this with a would have statement, like I would have gone shopping, or I would have traveled, something like that. So if you had, at native speed, I'll read this at native speed, it sounds interesting, yeah? So if you had had free time last week, what would you have done? If you had had free time last week, what would you have done? Okay, let's go to this one. I really want to focus on this one because it uses a negative in this question part, and that's kind of tricky to understand. So if you had come to work early, wouldn't you have had time to get ready for your presentation? If you had come to work early, wouldn't you have had time to get ready for your presentation? So when would we use a question like this? When would we use something like this? This is something you use, this type of question, this negative, is something you use when you think you have a pretty good idea, like some past advice for someone, and they didn't do it. So in this situation, imagine your coworker had a presentation. Your coworker's responsibility was a presentation, but they didn't have time to finish before the presentation. So you want to give some advice, and you say, if you had come to work early, or earlier maybe, wouldn't you have had time for your presentation? We use this wouldn't because it kind of sounds like, I'm not sure, but don't you think? So we use that negative to make our questions a little bit softer. Wouldn't you have had time? Again, wouldn't you have had? So this one, have had. Again, these two verbs are the same, well, they're the same verb, yes, but have had here because this is using this would have had structure. So these are kind of tricky when you use, when your verb is have here, but with practice, this becomes easier. Okay, let's go to this one. Another example. If we hadn't called the office, how would our team have known we were running late for the meeting? If we hadn't called the office, how would our team have known we were running late for the meeting? So what's happening here? Negative. If we had not called the office. So that means we did call the office. But we want to imagine if we had not called, how would our team have known? So that means by what method or in what way would our team have known we were running late for the meeting? So we're talking about this untrue situation, and we're asking a question about that. So we still need to use this would. In this case, my subject is our team, yeah? How would our team have known? Right here. How would our team have known we were running late for the meeting? Okay. I'll go to the last parts and then I'll answer your questions. I see some questions are coming in the chat, so I'll come to you in just a second. Okay. Last two. If you hadn't found an apartment by June, where would you have lived? If you hadn't found an apartment by June, where would you have lived? So this sentence, again, if you had not. So I know it seems difficult, but this means the other person did find an apartment by June. But the other person just wants to ask, what was your plan? Like, if you hadn't found an apartment by June, where would you have lived? Like, did you have another plan? You just want to imagine that situation. Okay. Okay, let's go to the last part because this one is a really, really useful one, and you will probably hear this a lot in movies and TV. So I want to explain what's happening in this sentence, in this question, really. Sometimes when you're watching movies, when you're watching TV, sorry, there's loud sounds right now. I want to make sure you hear this point. So sometimes when you watch TV or when you watch movies, you'll hear a character say just this question. What would you have done? What would you have done? This doesn't have an if part of the sentence, yeah? The character usually, they don't say the if part. They say, what would you have done? This is saying, if you had been in my position in the past, what would you have done? So this is an advice question, really. So it's like this character had some difficult situation in the past, and maybe they made a mistake. It was hard to deal with. So they want to ask someone else, if you had been in my position, so if you were me in the past, what would you have done? But usually, this part is removed. Usually the character says, what would you have done? What would you have done? All right, that is part 3. That is everything for today. I'm coming for your questions now. I'm scrolling up in the chat to find it. I saw several of you ask me some questions. I'm coming for you, YouTube, first. Someone asked me about contractions. Trishan says, is there any contracted form of what you have? No. We sometimes say what you've, but there's not like that's not like what and you and have together. That's you and have together. So we do not put all 3 of those words together. No. Okay. Some others are coming in. Jean Carlos Arella says, if you had been here, would you have gone to the beach with me? Very nice question. Very nice question. Okay. Kanwaljit says, if she'd told you about her feelings, what would you have done? Perfect, perfect. Nice example. Facebook, I am coming for you. I do not see any questions. Uzma says, if I had. So don't forget, if you want to use the verb have in your example, in this grammar, if I had free time. Don't forget, there's 2 hads there. If I had free time last week, I would have visited my friend's house. I would have visited. So make sure this part, oops, sorry, I'm showing you the wrong board. Same grammar though. Make sure you use the past participle form of the verb. I would have visited my friend's house. Okay, other points. I don't see other questions on Facebook. Everyone's saying hello. Hello, Facebook. Monday Blue, hello. One of our members, I would have gotten the project done. So gotten is something we use in American English a lot. Okay. I have to finish up there actually for today. Wow, that was fast as always. So I will show you today's lesson boards one more time real quick. Come on. Okay, this is today's lesson topic. You can take a picture of this so that you can easily take notes and review a little bit would have and wouldn't have today's lesson. Hooray! So I hope that was helpful for you. Sorry about the noise. I can't control it, unfortunately. It started at the beginning of the lesson today. So frustrating. So I hope this isn't a problem next time. Next week's lesson, I will be back. For those of you who are asking, I will, of course, be back in next week. Next week's lesson is right here. Next week, I'm going to talk about how to use past perfect tense. Past perfect tense. So those of you who are asking, why do you use had? Join me next week. Join me next week. I'm going to talk about the grammar behind that had structure. So I know that many people ask questions about that. The short answer in that case is that it's had plus the past participle form of the verb have. So join me next week, July 8th. It's already July, can you believe it? July 8th, 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, that is New York City time. If you do not know your local time, please use your Google skills to figure it out. So that will be fun, as always. I will say goodbye for now, though, so thank you, as always, for joining me live. Make sure to check the link in the description for your free beginner level course and the downloadable PDF ebook to practice your English. Thanks very much for liking and sharing the video, and also please don't forget to send me your other questions at the Ask Alicia link. Okay, I will say goodbye there, so enjoy the rest of your week, enjoy your weekend, and I will see you again next time. Bye!